Hello, this is Julia Child. Welcome to Home Cooking with Master Chefs. Happy cooking and bon appetit. Some ingredients are real staples in my kitchen, things I just wouldn't be without. For instance, very fresh eggs, the fine olive oils and walnut oils that add such good flavor, and my favorite herbs and spices. I'll tell you how I choose them and what you should look for when you shop. Eggs come in different sizes and colors, but don't let that confuse you. Most important is to make sure you're buying eggs that are really fresh. Just click the topics here to learn what a smart shopper and cook should know. And don't forget to click the arrow when you want to continue. Some of my favorite ways to enjoy eggs are indeed the simplest preparations. Egg dishes don't have to be fancy to be delicious. Inside each of these eggs, you'd find my advice on the best ways to get good results in short order. Inside of a recipe, eggs can go through magical transformations. These dishes are examples that prove once again the egg is one of our most versatile foods. Click on each recipe for an example of eggs at work. If you choose to go to a recipe or lesson, then decide to join me again, just click the button labeled Back. Here is another staple in my pantry. Olive oils and other oils are popular these days, All of our chefs have their own favorites for salads and for cooking. There are a lot of choices, and the language on the labels can be very puzzling. Which oil should you use when? For some answers, just click on the picture. Let your taste be your guide. And when you're ready to put clarified butter or a fine, fresh oil to work, try one of these recipes. Click on each to get started, and if you decide to go to a recipe or lesson and then want to come back to this tour, just click the button labeled Back. I always keep a supply of herbs and spices on hand. Tarragon, rosemary, thyme, cloves, cinnamon. I'll combine my spices, but I'm not for putting a whole lot of herbs in together. I think they kill each other off. To learn how I like to use the seasonings pictured here, go ahead and click each one. Here are some recipes that make particularly good use of my favorite seasonings. Don't just dump them in. Add a bit at a time and taste constantly as you go. That's a tip from all the great chefs. You could click each recipe to select it. If you go to a recipe or lesson and then want to rejoin me in the pantry, just click the button labeled Back. This is the end of my pantry visit. To see another part of the kitchen, please choose another tour. You don't need a lot of fancy equipment to be a good cook. Here's a look at the tools that I particularly like to use in my kitchen. Of course, good knives are essential, and you'll soon see how to choose, use, and take care of them properly. Next come some of my other favorite tools. They just make cooking a little easier. Now, whenever you're ready to move on, just click the arrow above. I admit to being a knife freak. I just love a good knife, and I've got many more than I need. But if you're just starting out, these 6 will suffice for almost anything you'll want to do. Click on each knife to learn more. Click the arrow when you're ready to go on. Your knives will be good to you if you're good to them. That means storing and sharpening properly, and never put them in the dishwasher. Click on one of these topics to learn what I've learned about knives. The best way to learn about using knives is to watch some of our experts. And then practice on your own. Click on each of these chefs to see the proficiency that practice has brought to them.
Now, we're going to split this piece of salmon like a book, and with a very sharp knife, we're going to follow the full length of the salmon and open it up just like a book. And it's best if you can do this in one cut, right through the salmon, about 3/4 of the way through. And when you make your first cut, start to open it up so you see exactly where you are with the knife, so you don't cut all the way through.
And I want to use a rocking motion. And I want to go ahead and slice real thin slices. And I'm using as a guide this middle knuckle on my finger, keeping my thumb in the back and then rocking the knife to go right through the garlic, and then turn it and chop it through the other direction. And then keep chopping here to make it a nice fine chop.
Hold the cake and turn the cake. This way is a fabulous way to get it straight. Gosh, great, huh? I'm a good chef. My mother's proud of me. And you have to turn the cake here because remove that crust. That crust is too hard. You won't be able to soak it if you leave the crust.
After cutting the shallot in half and trimming off one end, she peels back the shallot skin but leaves the other end intact. This makes it easy to hold on to. Then, using a very sharp knife, she slices the shallot crosswise into thirds. She makes 3 or 4 cuts through the shallot, and finally minces the pieces into very small dice. Alice prefers this method because she says none of the flavorful juices are lost on the cutting board. For just about every task in cooking, someone has invented a tool to make it easier. But you don't need every gadget that comes along. Now, I think these are worthwhile. Click on each one to learn more about it. Now, on to some recipes that give you a chance to practice. Click on each recipe to select it. If you go to a recipe or lesson and then want to rejoin my tour, just click the button labeled Back and I'll be waiting for you. This is the end of my tour of knives and tools. To visit another part of the kitchen, please choose another tour. Serving a wonderful meal is one of the nicest things you can do for your family and friends. And I don't waste a minute worrying over fancy crystal and 12 dozen double damask dinner napkins. I like to use fairly simple things, some that have been in my family a while. They're the kinds of platters and utensils that will take some wear and still look good. When you're ready to see more of what I use to entertain, be sure to click the arrow above. I don't use anything that I have to worry about too much. All of these pieces have qualities that earn their place on the sideboard again and again. Click on each item to learn about it, and don't forget to go to the arrow when you're ready to continue the tour. When it comes to presenting a dish, I want the food to look like food, not like a formal Japanese flower garden. Always think about how the food will look on the plate, what different foods will look like next to each other, and what kinds of garnishes make sense without being fussy. Click on each dish to learn more about the way I like to do things. If any of these dishes look like something you'd like to try, you can find the details by selecting the recipe. If you look over a recipe then want to return to this tour, click the button labeled Back. We're at the end of this tour, but you may certainly select another one to visit a different part of the kitchen. I love good wine, both to drink and to cook with. I think good wine is essential to good eating. Don't be put off by the wine snobs. You don't need to know a great deal to start tasting and serving wine with confidence. Let's take a look at some wines, some glasses, and how to open, pour, and toast. Whenever you're ready to move on, just click the arrow above. When it comes to choosing a wine, here are some of my favorites. When you click on each, you'll learn some basic guidelines to help you make your own selections. Just click on the arrow when you're ready to continue. Now what about wine glasses? Some people think each type of wine should be served in its own special type of glass, and that's fine for them, but who has room enough to store that many wine glasses? Just click to select a glass and learn about it. When it comes to opening wine, everyone seems to have a favorite way to do it. What you want to use is the opener that works best for you. Click these to learn how they're supposed to work and which one I like. Now let's pour some wine. Pouring correctly will prevent the horror of red wine drips on the white tablecloth, and if you're going to toast, you might as well do that right too. Select each of these topics to see how. Bon appétit! Wine is a wonderful ingredient to cook with, too. It's an easy way to lend delicious flavor to your food. The only guideline? Use a good wine, one that you would happily drink. Click on each recipe to see how it uses wine. And if you go to a recipe or lesson and want to rejoin my tour, just click the button labeled Back. This is the end of the wines tour. To visit another part of the kitchen, please choose another tour. I have hundreds of pots and pans, it seems to me. Little tiny frying pans that are just for a single fried egg. Lots of French copper ones in all shapes and sizes. Stew pots, skillets, saucepans. Well, you name it, I got it. But the truth is, you can do an awful lot of good cooking with just a few. I'll show you the ones I use over and over and tell you why I like them so much. To continue on this tour, just remember to click the arrow above. Let's look at the basics. I think this group should be the starter for any cook. If you buy good, solid equipment and take care of it, it should last practically forever. at least as long as my faithful 50-year-old restaurant stove. Now click on each pot or pan when you want to know more about it. Beyond the basics, I'd buy these pieces next if I were stocking up from scratch. To learn more about them, just click to explore this stovetop group also. You'll soon come to have your own favorites. And here are some recipes that make great use of the cookware you've just seen. If you look into one of the recipes or lessons, then want to return to my tour, be sure to click the button labeled Back. This is now the end of my stovetop tour. Select a different tour if you'd like to visit another area of the kitchen. Lydia Bastianich is pasta queen extraordinaire. She's chef and co-owner with her husband Felice of the popular New York restaurant Felidia. As this warm and knowledgeable chef moves through the preparation of a recipe, she carefully inspects pasta for its sheen. She pours a drip of olive oil into her palms and rubs them together to test the aroma. This is a chef who cares deeply about her profession. Good food, knowingly and lovingly cooked. Andre Saunders has been a André Saltner has been a steadfast influence at his restaurant Lutèce since 1961. His list of awards is longer than his towering toque is high, and under his direction Lutèce has been renowned and revered not only in New York but throughout the nation. Although Chef André is a traditionalist, he admires creativity, but he thinks we shouldn't forsake hundreds of years of tradition just for the sake of change. When you eat at Lutèce, you share not only his famous food, but also a bit of his Alsatian heritage. There's not much to putting this dessert together if you're used to beating eggs and folding. While it's baking, the tart lemon slices seemingly melt to form a filling, and in one good bite you get the tanginess of the lemon, the sweetness of the meringue, and the subtlety of ground almonds. The bake-off is a hearty meat and potato stew packed in an earthen pot. Alsatian housewives used to send it off to cook in the local baker's oven, the bake-offe. When you do it at home, your kitchen fills with the heady aromas of herbs and wine and meat, and a wonderful meal in the making. Save flambe, and everyone around you will look for a great bolt of shooting flames, but the tart flambe is not set afire. It gets its name from a traditional Alsatian method of baking. The tart would be put into the baker's oven when it was being fired, and when the oven flared up, the flames engulfed the tart and browned the top. This recipe works perfectly well in a regular oven, too. It's so light, crisp, oniony, and bacony I could eat a whole one right now. Capellini all'Istriana, named for Chef Lydia's seaside hometown in Italy, has impeccably fresh seafood, tomatoes that taste like tomatoes, and delicate angel hair spaghetti. This is a perfect illustration of how delicious pasta can be with just a few carefully chosen ingredients. This lovely dish shows what can happen to tough old greens if you treat 'em right. In Chef Lydia's hands, broccoli di rape has an agreeable bitterness that blends wonderfully with the sweetness of the sausage and the full ripeness of the cheese. A great demonstration of how to cook pasta the real Italian way. This is a sumptuous dish, a risotto to dream about. It has a deep, rich mushroom taste and a magnificent creamy texture. This is what risotto is all about. In New Orleans, everyone knows the energetic Emeril Lagasse, chef and owner of Emeril's in Nola. This quintessential New Orleans chef, who hails from Fall River, Massachusetts, has found his spiritual home here. Under the dynamic tutelage of Ella Brennan of the legendary Commander's Palace, Chef Emeril steeped himself in the region's culture. He fished with the fishermen, dug crawfish in the bayou, raised rabbit and quail, and absorbed the essence of this rich cuisine. One of the classic dishes of New Orleans is étouffée, a spicy, rich brown stew that Chef Emeril makes with wonderfully fresh shrimp and crawfish. Its base is the famous New Orleans roux, without which no Louisianian can call himself or herself a cook. When weather turns balmy, Louisianians head outdoors for a crab boil, a meal fit for a small army. Fresh crabs and crawfish, live and kicking, make all the difference. If you don't have them, use lobsters, fish, chicken, or make a vegetarian version with potatoes, artichokes, carrots, and onions. When Louisianians give you a recipe for bisque, étouffée, or gumbo, they always begin by saying, "First you make a roux." It is simply assumed that you already know how to make this flour-based thickening agent. Chef Emerald offers the unique local version of classic French roux. Baking is not a cushy job, but it's a career that Nancy Silverton has chosen with passion and dedication. And she's become an immense success with her La Brea Bakery in Los Angeles. When Chef Nancy and her husband Mark Peel decided to open their restaurant Campanile with a bakery alongside, she didn't know much about baking bread. But after courses at the famous École de Notre in Paris, she began her own experiments, living and breathing bread 24 hours a day. And the result is some of the best bread in the USA. One of the most important ingredients in bread making is the yeast. Many of Chef Nancy's breads are made with her own special starter, which uses grapes as a fermenting yeast-producing agent. It wants a good 10 days of sitting around before it's ready to go, but it's simple indeed to make, and it will be yours forever, since it can be kept alive indefinitely. This is the dough formula for making Chef Nancy's very special bread with its sturdy brown crust, its moist and lightly chewy interior, and its real taste and body. It's her special lightly sour starter and the slow rising she gives her dough that makes her bread unique. Flat, puffy, roughly rectangular, this easily formed loaf of unusual bread is easy to serve. Just break off a piece and serve it with soups and salads, or take it on a picnic, or stuff it for sandwiches, and it makes absolutely wonderful toast. Chef Nancy's focaccias are like individual 6-inch pizzas, except they're puffy and they're made from her special rustic dough. Even if you're a novice baker, you can't go wrong with them when you top them or split and fill them with a colorful mixture. Chef Nancy's sturdy olive bread has the delicious aroma of real olives, but not overpoweringly so. It's baked without any commercial yeast and is formed in a wicker basket. Olive bread is a favorite among La Brea Bakery's customers, and now we can all make it in our own kitchens. Few in the field can match Jacques Pepin for breadth of experience. He's not only a master chef, but a master teacher. Chef Jacques is Dean of Studies at the French Culinary Institute in New York and a highly regarded instructor and lecturer on gastronomy at Boston University. He's written numerous books and countless articles and hosts his own television program. He does it all, and he still finds time to design and paint his own menus. He's a man of boundless and seemingly inexhaustible energy. Puff pastry puffs because of the way it is rolled out and folded, and then rolled and folded again and again until it consists of hundreds of layers of dough sandwiched between hundreds of layers of butter. When baked, the dough puffs up between layers of butter, which makes for wonderfully buttery, flaky, tender eating. Just the making of it teaches anyone the essential feel of pastry doughs. The classic vol au vent is a real construction job involving lots of work. Chef Jacques' ingenious alternative is far easier to make and still worthy of holding the most marvelous concoctions such as his sweetbreads in truffle sauce. Chef Jacques' braised sweetbreads are a splendid example of classic French cuisine, something you can rarely enjoy in these times of minimalist cookery and minimum time. His is an elaborate recipe, definitely one for those who enjoy the mechanics of real cooking. This is a marvelous dish with its tender pastry, meltingly subtle sweetbreads, and that meaty, winey, truffly sauce. It's such a rare treat. This is the modern, classic French way to achieve a fine, strong brown stock, the kind you want to have on hand for a base for homemade soups and sauces, such as the one Chef Jacques adds to his splendid braised sweetbreads. Here is a recipe from the glorious past, first made famous by the Hotel Plaza Athénée and based on a great Parisian lobster dish of the 1800s, homard à l'américaine. For his version, Chef Jacques steams the lobster briefly, makes the sauce out of the shells, and cooks a cheese soufflé to accompany them. A soufflé presents the egg at its most magnificent. Master the technique with Chef Jacques' classic, and you'll be ready to tackle endless variations. Jean-Louis Paladin blends contemporary and traditional French ideas. He's been doing so since 1979 at his restaurant Jean-Louis at the Watergate in Washington, D.C. When he first arrived here from his native Gascony, he asked himself more than once why he had come. But today he finds his country one of the best food sources in the world, and he says the influence of French chefs has helped trace a little path from their kitchens to ours. This open and exuberant man has a passion for everything he does. Life is fun, he says, and it is. Chef Jean-Louis roasts these duck breasts right in his fireplace. He loves to cook this way. It reminds him of his childhood home in Gascony, where a big pot of soup bubbled over glowing embers. When you get something as wonderful as foie gras, a simple preparation shows it off best. In Chef Jean-Louis' recipe, the tart sweetness of the fruit with the full, deep flavor of the meat makes an absolutely delicious dish. Chef Jean-Louis' prune croustade is a fine use for phyllo dough. Layers of this paper-thin dough brushed with melted butter and coated with sugar form a crisp package around the brandy-marinated fruit. Mary Sue Milliken and Susan Feniger are a lively pair. They began separate careers in the Midwest, then went on to formal training at Chicago's acclaimed Le Perroquet restaurant, then a season in France for each. They teamed up in 1982 at City Cafe in Los Angeles. They next opened the larger City restaurant with a menu of eclectic cuisine based on travels to Thailand and India. They're now focusing their energies on their flamboyant Mexican restaurant, the Border Grill in Santa Monica. This spicy dish starts with bright orange lentils that mellow to the shade of pumpkin when cooked. They're smaller and sweeter than the more familiar brown lentils. Chefs Mary Sue and Susan like to set out huge bowls of this hot yellow popcorn as a bar snack. Adjust the seasoning to your own taste, they advise, since it's definitely spicy. This vegetarian curry gives pleasure to all the senses. The fragrant and colorful cumin, coriander, cardamom, cloves, cayenne, and turmeric tickle the eye and nose. The sound of hot mustard seeds popping greets your ears. Altogether, the taste is sublime. Packed into attractive jars, these potent, sweet and spicy tomatoes make lovely holiday presents or house gifts. Chefs Mary Sue and Susan have often served small ramekins of this Indian relish with their vegetarian platters. Lemon ginger tea, the very sound of it is refreshing, and it's especially so when served with highly spiced dishes of Thai and Indian origin. Here is a refreshing Thai salad with 3 kinds of ripe melon dressed in a spicy sauce. This is one of the dishes that inspired Chef Mary Sue on her trip to Bangkok, where melons grow abundantly. A good use for melons, too, remarks Chef Susan, who favors taking them out of the breakfast-only category. Jeremiah Tower has star power. The center of his galaxy is the glamorous Stars restaurant in San Francisco. Early in his career, he became so intrigued with Alice Waters' fledgling Chez Panisse that he took a job there. His introduction of the California regional dinner, based on local produce in its season, was a rousing success and launched him, Alice Waters, in Chez Panisse. Throughout his career, he's donated his talents extensively to charity events. He's a teacher intent on spreading the fresh food philosophy and is considered one of this country's great restaurateurs. Barbecuing on an outdoor grill is certainly a convivial way to cook, and small butterflied chickens are worthy subjects. Chef Jeremiah serves them with a warm salad of fresh young vegetables, making a light, attractive warm-weather meal. Poaching is an ancient and lovely way to cook chicken, where the broth flavors the chicken and the chicken flavors the broth, and you get the best of both. Chef Jeremiah has added some flavorful touches, such as a bacon and mushroom stuffing under the skin. It would be entirely fat-free if you left out the bacon, but that's really carrying things too far. The real test of a good cook is a perfectly roasted chicken, and Chef Jeremiah could well win the title with his, which he roasts with garlic, lemon, and herbs. What a treat! Bring on the roasted potatoes, bring on the mohaché. In 1971, when Alice Waters opened her now legendary restaurant Chez Panisse in Berkeley, she made a commitment to serve only the finest and freshest ingredients. No cardboard February tomatoes or tasteless winter strawberries. Before Alice cooks, she grabs a big basket, goes to the farmer's market, and, as she says, she lets the vegetables lead her around. Her tireless efforts to promote freshness, quality, and variety have strongly influenced not only restaurant chefs, but supermarket produce buyers as well. Chef Alice sees the bounty of winter in rich shades of greens. During the slow garden months, she garnishes every plate with a sauté of these tasty treasures, and sometimes surrounds them with nutty, sweet prosciutto. Chef Alice's Mediterranean tapenade is a sturdy mixture of olives and anchovies and capers laced together with fragrant olive oil. Hers is really the best I've ever eaten, even better than mine. It's a shame that beets are so often neglected because they are a hearty, delicious, and versatile winter vegetable. Those who shun them may well be remembering the tinny taste of canned beets, which bears no resemblance to the lovely flavor of the fresh beet. Just try them with blood oranges in this citrus-dressed salad. This fennel salad is like so much of my favorite food in Italy, where the beauty of the ingredients demands the simplest presentation. The fennel, mushrooms, and aromatic cheese are sliced paper thin so that they release their subtle flavors and aromas. A determined fellow like Jan Birnbaum never does anything halfway. Just catch a glimpse of him as he flies by on his Harley-Davidson, roaring between San Francisco and his new restaurant Catahoula in Calistoga. Jan began his culinary career by melding his Louisiana background with training under master chefs in New Orleans and in New York. His dishes are sometimes intense, at other times delicate, but they're always stunningly original. Sure, you can buy good smoked salmon, but smoking your own is not at all difficult when you have a smoker. Chef Jan's directions make it all so easy. Chef Jan has ideas for eggs other than a plain breakfast. For his tart, he does scramble them, but then he molds them into a sort of cake that he decorates with home-smoked salmon and tops with sour cream and caviar. And that takes scrambled eggs just about as far as they can go. It's a handsome sight on the dinner table. A whole leg of lamb roasted brown and beautiful under Chef Jan's spicy crust from the land of the bayous. Any host would be proud to stand and carve it for a table of hungry guests. When you want a starchy something to go with grilled or roasted meats, this unusual creation is particularly attractive and delicious. What is salsify? It's a carrot-shaped root vegetable with a pleasantly mild, almost sweet flavor. A sweetly refreshing selection of orange, grapefruit, and tangerine segments arranged all together, topped with a tender zabaione sauce, then lightly browned under the broiler. This is certainly a delicious way to end any meal, especially an important one. When Michel Richard enters his house, he likes to have it smell of cooking. It makes him feel at home. This may seem odd for a man who spends so much of his time running his flagship restaurant Citrus in Los Angeles and his offspring around the country. Michel can't imagine being anything but a chef, and he's been at it all his life. He's had such success in both his restaurants and pastry shops that people think he must have a secret source of rare and unusual ingredients. Quite the contrary, he simply uses and prides himself on using the best. Chef Michel's spectacular chocolate dome only looks impossibly complicated, but it's not that difficult, and you can make it in stages, up to a day in advance. These meltingly addictive hot chocolate truffles are warm mouthfuls of melted chocolate encased in a sweet, crusty shell. I'd never heard of anything like it before. Such a treat for a few select guests. Patrick Clark's father, a professional chef, had tried to discourage him from a culinary career. However, Patrick was determined, and he got a Boy Scout merit badge in cooking. His formal training started in New York City's Technical College, where the director encouraged him to study abroad, and that was a revelation to him. He describes his cooking as contemporary American, based on solid French technique, and he's considered one of the leaders of his profession. These charming roulades of salmon with their flecks of cracked black pepper and festive vegetable confetti make an outstanding appetizer or luncheon dish. Chef Patrick combines a Japanese sushi technique with a sauce based on Spanish gazpacho. Chef Patrick turns a mild-flavored fish, the lowly grouper, into something pungent and interesting to eat. Horseradish and chives give the fish a piquancy that is tamed with a buttery bed of mashed potatoes. Crisp fried leeks make a dramatic finish. Amy Ferguson Otter is a sparkling young executive chef at the Ritz-Carlton, Mauna Lani on Hawaii. Her cooking blends the cuisine of her native Texas with classic French and that of her adopted Big Island home, where the island elders have shown her how to search for the finest native greens and the freshest thimbleberries. I love to watch her. She's neat, she's precise, she knows just what she's doing. She's a fine teacher and a super chef. On a trip to the mainland, Chef Amy noticed that crab cakes were trendy. Her tasty local version uses ahi, fresh yellowfin tuna, while ulu, Hawaiian breadfruit, takes the place of the usual breadcrumbs or potatoes. Chef Amy's green papaya salad looks like finely shredded coleslaw. It has a fresh, sprightly, lightly spicy taste and can be eaten with almost anything. Ono is one of the great Hawaiian fish, and this dish is the very essence of the islands. Chef Amy pairs her ono with honeyed bananas that steam in big, fresh green leaves. If you can't find those great big green leaves, you can simply use baked bananas instead. The image of strapping Charlie Palmer growing up on a dairy farm in upstate New York and playing football doesn't quite fit in with a picture of him behind a stove in home economics class. But that, in fact, is where his cooking career began. He now owns the fine New York City restaurant Oriole. Early in his career, Chef Charlie traveled regularly to Europe and throughout the United States, visiting restaurants and meeting with chefs, and even now he picks up ideas from everywhere and comes out with really marvelous dishes. These succulent pepper-seared venison steaks with their pleasantly tart and fruity sauce of sun-dried cherries and Pinot Noir wine are a perfect marriage of good, rich flavors. Chef Charlie says you can use the same recipe for beef tenderloin or lamb loin steaks. These big buttery potato chips are thin slices of potato sandwiched together with herbs tucked inside and baked in the oven. Chef Charlie got the idea for them at Maxime's in Paris. A tender custard of pureed winter squash makes an attractive contrast to the robust flavors and texture of Chef Charlie's peppered venison steaks. Known for spectacular desserts, Chef Charlie offers up a warm chocolate mousse cupcake with a hint of tarragon. He got the idea from a piece of candy, a chocolate ganache with essence of tarragon that he ate in Brussels. Chef Charlie's tuiles are curvy chocolate sugar cookies that can turn even the humblest dessert into something elegant. He looks and cooks like a Texan, but he's originally a Californian. Robert Del Grande got into the restaurant business when he was helping out his wife to be at Cafe Annie, a small Houston bistro. He found he loved cooking, and he's been at Cafe Annie ever since. Chef Robert is fascinated with what happens to the flavors of ingredients. He tastes carefully and constantly adjusts for temperatures and textures and nuances of flavor. That's what Chef Robert's good cooking is all about. Chef Robert brings us two Texas staples, beef and chilies, in his recipe for seared filet mignon steaks, braised in a real Texas-style tomato and chili sauce. Chef Robert's tender and naturally sweet corn pudding is a very simple, natural formula of milk, grated fresh corn, and cornmeal, but be sure to use stone-ground cornmeal or it won't work. Takes but a few minutes once you've grated the corn. Chef Robert is a real expert on chilies, and he put some spicy little fellows to work in a sauce for his tender sea scallops. Nestled on a bed of creamy corn pudding, they make an inviting appetizer or luncheon dish. A larger portion provides a colorful and satisfying main course.
As an Italian chef, I have the opportunity of working with many wonderful ingredients, but pasta must be my favorite. We will now prepare orecchiette with broccoli di rape. Orecchiette is a dry pasta. It's called orecchiette because orecchie is the ear and it resembles the ear. So it matches very well with the broccoli di rape and the sausages. We will first take the sausage out of the casing. And this is a sweet Italian sausage. If you prefer to have a little spicy one, that's perfectly fine. But when you take it out of the casing, you get it nice and crisp all over. Okay. This is how you will find broccoli di rapa, and usually you buy it in bunches like you would asparagus. And what you're trying to do is, in cleaning it, is take the large stem, the big leaves, and peeling it like you would an asparagus. And just grab a little bit and just pull, and it will tell you by itself when you've done the job. Okay, let the sausage brown well. We get all the excess fat out of them. In the meantime, again, garlic. Add the garlic. Let the garlic brown. I like just a touch of the salt at this point. We will drain the excess fat out of it. Add a little bit of the fresh olive oil again. Cut the broccoli di rapa. Don't drain it. Let a little bit of water remain in the broccoli di rapa when you wash it. You'll need that just to steam it when you add it to the pot. Okay. Okay. At this point again, a little bit of salt, a little bit of the crushed pepper, and we cover it and we let it steam for a few minutes. The water is boiling. We put some salt and add the orecchiette. Okay. Mix immediately the pasta, then cover it tightly and bring it back to the boil. While we're waiting for the pasta to come back to the boil, we'll finish the sauce. We'll add the butter. We add some stock. And the stock should be either chicken stock or a light, flavorful stock. And we'll let it simmer like this. But you want the broccoli di rapa still to remain nice and crispy al dente. There are not many ingredients used in this dish, so every ingredient really counts. And in this case, we're going to use cheese pecorino romano. A lot of people wash the pasta if they've drained it. I don't particularly like the idea. I don't think it's right. In this case, drain well the pasta. Add it all to the sauce. And again, here you can put some sauce on the side to top the dishes when you serve it. But in this case, the sauce is quite uniform in small pieces, and it sort of spreads all over the pasta. Close the flame and then add the cheese. Nice warm plate. Pasta as a main course or risotto as a main course with a wonderful beginning and maybe some cheese and fruits at the end could be just wonderful. When one talks about the Italian table, pasta always comes to mind as the main staple. But certainly rice is a second runner-up. Now, to do a proper risotto, you need the proper rice, which is the arborio rice. As a flavoring, of course, we'll have the different mushrooms. And today we have about 6 different kinds. They're right here. The first one, what I have here, is the dry porcini mushroom. And I have reconstituted this in hot stock. This is the porcini mushrooms. And porcini, because porchetta is a little piglet. Well, we'll cut the porcini. The next one is the oyster mushroom. And usually the oyster mushroom will be in a cluster like this, and it will have one main attachment. It grows on wood, on trees. And you take that away, and that is the top part. The next one is the shiitake mushroom. The shiitake mushroom has a little stem here. We cut that off. That is tough. The next one is the chanterelle. We had one washed and ready to cut. I think if you leave different, some smaller, some larger, it also plays nice in the risotto itself as far as texture, as far as the actual visual. Saute pan, put a little bit of olive oil. Salt them lightly. Just let them simmer slowly to evaporate the water and concentrate the flavor. In the meantime, we'll begin with the risotto. A bit of olive oil. I think risotto is something that people shy away from it. They feel that that it's very labor intense and very sensitive. It really is not if you understand some of the principles that we're going to talk about, and if you understand the risotto itself. We'll add a little salt to the onions, and while they're sauteing, we'll chop the shallots. The shallots take about half of the time of cooking as the onions do, so we'll add them about half time. Just lower the flame and let it saute. And now we begin to add the rice. It's important that we first toast the rice, and the starches that are in there are released slowly and continuously. And at this point you have to stay close to the pot, and you have to mix continuously because you want all of the rice to have contact with the heat and be toasted. Okay, the rice is toasted, and you'll be able to tell that the rice is toasted because it is getting a little golden, and it is sort of loose, nice and dry. We'll add the white wine to it. And let the wine completely be absorbed by the rice. Now it's very important also that the stock be always at a boiling temperature. Yeah, I'm beginning to smell the nice aroma of the mushroom. That means that they're just about done. Do lower the flame a little bit. Always keep it perking. It always has to be on a boiling point. I'll add the reconstituted porcini mushrooms. I'll chop them fine. At this point I'll add the juice from the porcini mushrooms that were reconstituted, the rest of the mushrooms. Now, as you can see, I could be doing other things at the stove with the risotto going, but you do have to come back every few minutes. When the rice is just about to be dry and begins to attach itself to the bottom of the pan, then the next stock should go in. I will add the butter after I remove the rice from the fire. And I'm going to mantecare. Mantecare is, I guess amalgamate is the word, to amalgamate the butter into the starch. And then the last is the cheese. Before I do that, though, I'd always like to taste a little bit. In the risotto, we will use the Parmigiano Reggiano. Parmigiano Reggiano is 100% cow's milk, and it's, I guess, the king of Italian cheeses. Serving platter, nice and warm, and pour the risotto right on. Grate some fresh Parmigiano. Okay.
This is a fillet of Norwegian salmon, which we'll do an interesting preparation with today. I'm going to remove the pin bones from down the middle of the salmon. And the best way to locate the pin bones is to run your finger down the middle of the fillet of salmon and to uplift them a little bit. And then with a pair of pliers, preferably needle nose, you can go into the salmon, locate the bones and remove them by pulling them out. And once you get used to this, it's pretty easy. Okay, and double check to make sure that the pin bones are gone by running your finger down. As we see, we locate another one. Okay, we got them all out. Now, we're going to split this piece of salmon like a book, and with a very sharp knife, we're going to follow the full length of the salmon and open it up just like a book. And it's best if you can do this in one cut, right through the salmon, about 3/4 of the way through. And when you make your first cut, start to open it up so you see exactly where you are with the knife, so you don't cut all the way through. And we're going to place this on a piece of parchment paper. The salmon needs to be pounded out a little bit, so we need to put a piece of plastic wrap over the top of that. Here we have a meat pounder, or a carpaccio pounder, as we call it at the restaurant. We use it to pound out fish. And you want to get this as even as possible and not too thin. Make sure that the salmon is the perfect thickness so you have a nice even roll. At this point, we remove our plastic, and you can discard that. And we're going to season the salmon with some salt. We use kosher salt and a little fresh pepper. Here we have a little cooked leek julienne, which we're going to spread across the salmon. Now this, you want to put just a thin layer of leek. You don't want to put too much because then it'll be difficult to roll the salmon up. And you're going to roll just like you're rolling a big cigar. Using the parchment paper, you're going to roll and tuck. And roll and remove the parchment as you make your roll. And tuck. Ensure that it's nice and tight. And use the parchment to pull the salmon up. And tuck. And tuck it nice and tight. And you're going to end up like a big salmon sausage. Then you're going to bring it back to you. Tuck the paper nice and tight. And don't be afraid to roll it tight. This is where the salmon is going to get its perfectly round shape. This dish was inspired actually by Japanese sushi type dish. It's going to look like almost like a sushi type salmon. So it has to be nice and tight. Then you're going to twist the ends to make them stay nice and tight. We're going to tie them with a piece of string. And at this point, the salmon has to be placed in the refrigerator and set aside to chill for an hour. And once that's done, we have this. Now we have to remove the ends. And now we have to roll this in the foil. We first brush our foil with a little oil. And we're going to unroll the salmon right onto the foil. The best thing to do is just to place it on the foil in the parchment and unroll it and remove the salmon. Now we're going to lightly coat this with some cracked black pepper. The amount of pepper you put on the salmon is totally up to you. It depends how much pepper you like. In the same way we did before with the parchment, a nice tight roll. Twist the ends, nice and tight. At this point, the dish can be prepared up to 3 to 4 hours in advance. The sauce we're preparing for this salmon is based on a mayonnaise, and it's actually inspired by the Spanish soup gazpacho. It's going to have those flavors in it, and this is an olive oil based mayonnaise. Okay, and to that we're going to add our cucumber juices and our tomato juice, and we'll whisk those into the mayonnaise. Consistency of the sauce should lightly coat the back of a spoon. Okay, we're going to add a little mineral water. It brings out the clarity and the flavor of the tomato juice and the cucumber juice. A little salt, a pinch of cayenne, a little lemon juice, and a couple of drops of red wine vinegar. Okay, then you want to cover this with plastic wrap, put it in the refrigerator for about 2 hours. And now that the salmon is cool enough, long enough to retain its shape, we're going to cook it. In the pan here we have a little bit of peanut oil. I like to use peanut oil for this operation because it has the high smoke point. We want to get this to about 500, 550 degrees. This is nice and hot. It's just about smoking. I'm going to place the salmon in the pan. And it's very important that you roll it so it gets nice and golden brown on all sides. This is about 2 inches in diameter, about 2.5 inches in diameter. So we're looking about between 3 and 5 minutes to roll this in the hot oil here. We remove the salmon from the pan. Put it in a towel to drain, and let it cool to room temperature for about an hour before you slice it. Now we want to adjust the seasoning of our sauce. Take a nice clean spoon and stir in the fresh pepper. We're going to remove our salmon. The 2 end pieces of the salmon are not really going to be usable, so we're going to trim those away. And I also find that the foil facilitates the slicing of the salmon, so you don't want to unroll the whole fillet of salmon. You want to leave it in the foil, and with a very sharp knife just cut off the end, okay, and put that on the side. You're going to make a slice of about 3/4 of an inch, and with a sawing motion slice right through the foil and the salmon. You can see the nice vein of leek on the inside and nice medium salmon in the middle there. And then we're going to unroll it. See, it looks just like a little Japanese sushi roll. Place them on the plate, and we're going to take a ladle of our sauce. You can be generous with the sauce. Then we're going to add our little gazpacho garnishes. Diced cucumber first, which has been blanched. Roasted red pepper. And then some chopped chive.
Patrick Clark is an example of fine culinary training and a lively imagination, producing creative and delicious results with essentially very simple ingredients. For this crisp and unusual topping, Chef Patrick julienne leeks and deep fry them slowly, just long enough for their natural moisture to be cooked out. It's an attractive edible decoration for a grouper or other fish or chicken or most anything, including poached eggs. And here's his chive oil. It's simply fresh chives pureed in the blender with vegetable oil, and then you put it in one of these squeezy bottles, and it'll keep like this for 2 or 3 days in the fridge. And now Patrick will show us how to give a most ingenious boost of flavor to any nice but undistinguished fish, such as the lowly grouper.
There are many different types of grouper. This is a red grouper, which comes from the Gulf down in Florida. And you see the flesh is kind of a snowy white, as opposed to the black grouper, which is a little bit more translucent. Here's some fresh black pepper here. You can use white pepper if you like. It's going to be covered so you won't see the black pepper. A little kosher salt here again. Now to prepare the horseradish crust, we're going to have to grate some horseradish. Holding it firmly, just bring it across the grater until you get about 3/4 of a cup of horseradish root here. Now we're going to take our horseradish and put it into our breadcrumbs. Set that aside. Now we're going to prepare our egg wash. We'll break up the eggs a little bit. Add just a little bit of milk there. And I'm going to bring our breadcrumbs, which have the horseradish. We have our flour, which has been seasoned with kosher salt and freshly ground pepper. We're going to put our eggs in a flat dish also, so as not to get too much egg wash on the other side of the fish, which is not being breaded. Here we have some freshly chopped parsley, thyme and rosemary. Add that to the herbs, to the breadcrumbs and the horseradish. We'll mix it in and get all the herbs and the horseradish evenly distributed throughout the breadcrumbs. Now we'll proceed to lightly bread the fish in the flour. Again, the seasoned side down into the flour. You want to shake off all the excess because the flour otherwise will get gummy, and we don't want that. It's just to facilitate holding the egg wash. Okay. Into the egg, strip off the excess, and into the horseradish crust. Pat it on firmly and pick it up, and you're going to have a nice coating of horseradish and herb breadcrumb there. Now we prepare to cook our grouper. We have in this pan some canola oil, and we want to get that to about 350 degrees in temperature. We're going to cook our fish with the crust side down first. We want to do that first so we can brown the crumbs and also make sure that the crust stays adhered to the fish. Now the breadcrumbs will brown quite quickly, about 2 minutes. So we're going to have to actually finish cooking the fish on the other side. With a nice golden brown crust, and we can turn our first piece over. There we go. Now at this point, once you turn it over and your crust is brown, here you would want to reduce the heat just a little bit to ensure that the fish gets cooked all the way through. Okay, this feels just about where I like it, just firm to the touch. It'd be nice to use a slotted spatula, which will facilitate some of the excess oil, and we're going to drain it on paper towels. And here we have some mashed potatoes, which are going to be the base of the dish here. 1 mound of mashed potatoes in the middle of the plate. Piece of fish right on top. And the flavor booster here is the chive oil. The chive oil is right around the potatoes. A mound of crispy leeks. And if you like, we have some extra long chives here, which make a very dramatic garnish.
With the fillet of beef, I'm going to make a very traditional red chili sauce from a base of tomatoes and onion and garlic, and with these dried chilies. These are pasilla chilies. Now these are the chopped onions. So I put these in the skillet sort of like a bed. Then I'll add the garlic cloves on top of that, and then I'll add the tomatoes. And what we're going to do is put these in a very hot broiler, And we're going to essentially blister them, almost virtually char them. They'll blacken, and they'll take on a whole different variety of flavors, very smoky and caramelized. I'm going to toast the pasilla chilies. Lightly toast them in this medium warm skillet. And the idea is to bring out more flavor in the chili. And you'll know when they're done because you start to smell them. They get very, very aromatic. And sometimes they'll even puff up a little bit. Now these are the broiled tomatoes. So these are going to transfer to the blender. Once you have all the onions and garlic and tomato in the blender, it's nice to add the chicken stock to the pan, because what you're going to have left in the pan is all those juices from the tomatoes that have sort of caramelized. Use the stock to deglaze the pan and put that in with the sauce too. Then the toasted pasilla chilies, before we use them, we just break the ends off and just empty the seeds out. And once you have the seeds out, just break them into sort of smaller pieces and fit them into the blender. And then we're going to puree it. If you let it go for 30 seconds or a minute, eventually everything will be pureed very smooth. Now I'm going to season the beef with a little bit of salt and pepper. And then I'm going to take these to the stove and we'll cook them. Here I have a very hot skillet. I'm going to put just a little bit of peanut oil in, not much. And then I'm going to add the beef, very hot, to sear the fillets. So in this recipe what we're doing is first we're searing the meat at a very high temperature to get that caramel brown flavor. So once they brown very nicely, turn these over and you can see how nicely they're seared. Do the same thing on the other side, let them brown, and then we'll take them out. Once it's been well seared on both sides, we then remove them from the skillet to a plate. So then in the same skillet, we'll add the puree of tomato and chili. And again, sort of lightly cook the sauce, picking up all the pan juices from the beef. Then I'll add a little bit of cilantro, about 2 tablespoons. Now at this point, I'm going to add the fillets, which are seared rare, back to the sauce and let them slowly cook in the sauce. This will take, on very low heat, just about 3 to 5 minutes to cook them to a nice medium rare. I'm going to finish this dish with a little avocado relish and some cotija cheese, grated, which is an aged cow milk cheese. Now I'm going to put the fillet in the center of the plate and then spoon some of the wonderful sauce over the fillet. Then I'm going to top the fillet with a little fresh avocado relish. And the very last thing is the cotija cheese. You just sort of sprinkle over the top. Gives it a nice look and a nice flavor. In this recipe for sea scallops with wild mushrooms and tomatillo sauce, I'm going to use these serrano chilies. They're a particular favorite of mine. They have a nice sharp chili flavor. So I really like pretty spicy food, so what I usually do is just break the stems off and throw them in whole. So I'm going to put these in the pot, and to this I'm going to add tomatillos, which are these little green husk tomatoes, and you just peel these off. The tomatillos should be nice and green like that and very firm. I'll add these to the pot. Also I'm going to add a little white onion, half of it, and just really coarsely chopped. And then a couple of garlic cloves. Then just add enough water to cover the ingredients. You don't have to really measure this very precisely, just so that the tomatillos sort of swim around in there. And then we're going to boil it for about 10 minutes to cook the tomatillos. Now these are the tomatillos when they're cooked, and they haven't blown up. They're just a very soft quality to them. Then drain off the liquid. And then add them to your blender. And what I like to do is sort of control it by just pulsing it so that you leave some texture to the sauce. So for the remainder of this sauce, I'm going to use these shiitake mushrooms, which are wild mushrooms. I just cut them into not real fine pieces, something that when we saute them, they'll have a nice shape in the sauce. And then this is cilantro. I just kind of roll it up and chop right through everything, the leaves, the stems, and everything. I usually cut down to where the stems begin to get very, very thick, and then just kind of roughly chop it till it looks just about right. And then next I'm going to start the corn pudding, and it's made by using fresh corn that we grate on a cheese grater. Okay, when you're finished grating the corn, what you'll have in the bowl is a very nice puree of corn. And now I'm going to cook the corn pudding. I've brought some milk to a boil. I'm going to start this corn pudding by adding a little cornmeal to thicken up the milk. The best way to do this is to add the cornmeal slowly while you're whipping it. If the milk is good and hot, this will thicken pretty fast. Then you add the corn puree that we've grated to the mixture. You just want to cook it enough to get it to thicken up. But once it's thick, then you just take it off the heat and keep it warm until it's ready to serve. Next, I'm going to saute the mushrooms in some butter. That's about 2 tablespoons. That's a very hot fire. All we want to do is just really burn the water out and let the butter just slightly brown. And then we'll add the mushrooms. Okay, now the mushrooms are fairly well sauteed and lightly browned. You can see we have some nice little caramelized segments in the bottom of the pan. Now we're going to add the tomatillo sauce. And you see in Mexican cooking sometimes you hear fry the sauce. It's essentially what I'm going to do is add the sauce to the hot pan. And all you want to do is really stir it and gently stir the bottom of the pan, and you'll see all those little pan juices slowly dissolve. Then we'll add a little bit of chicken stock. Really, you just want to thin it down to it's a nice consistency. Okay, so I'm going to put this off to the side. And now I'm going to saute the sea scallops. I just put a little bit of salt on them. And then a little bit of pepper. Then I'll put a little more butter in this hot skillet. Again, melted to coat the pan. We're going to sear these sea scallops at a fairly hot temperature, where the outside will get a nice crispy sear on them. And then we'll turn the pan down and let them roast slowly. These scallops that are nicely seared and brown like that. So to tell if the scallops are done, you can just feel them with your fingers to see how soft they are in the center. And what you want to feel like, they should be firm, have a little bit of give, not real hard and solid. And when the scallops are ready, heat the sauce back up. And this last minute I'm going to add the cilantro to it and just bring the sauce up to a boil. Now we're ready to plate the dish. First, I'm going to add a little bit of cream to this corn pudding to finish it. In the center of a dinner plate, put a little bit of the corn pudding. Then I spoon a little bit of the sauce over the pudding, alongside the pudding onto the plate. So you get to see a little bit of the green sauce as well as the pretty yellow of the corn pudding. Then for our main course, we would put 3 large scallops sort of nestled in the center. And then one of my favorite things to do is to add to the end just a little bit of fresh cream, cold even. Just kind of pour it over the top, let it run into the sauce. And then I'm just going to garnish it with a little bit of, this is fresh tomato salsa in the center, like another contrast. And then I'll just put a little sprig of cilantro on top to finish the dish.
Hawaii has at least 50 varieties of papaya. The papaya I'll be using today is this green papaya. So today I'm going to just cut off the ends of the papaya, cut it in half. You can see how immature this papaya is by the seeds. They're very, very white. Now, it's a little difficult to remove these seeds from a green papaya, as you'll see. So bear with me a moment as we dig into this papaya and get these seeds out. Here you go, we succeeded. So now I'm going to peel it Here you go. And grate my papaya. You can see when I grate it that it's very, very firm. It grates very easily. I'm just going to add this to my bowl of already grated papaya. I've previously blanched this tomato. I'm going to just peel it. We'll be julienning it. I'm going to seed this tomato. I'm only going to do 1/4 of it. Just to add that to the remaining of the tomato. I'm going to be cleaning the red serrano chili peppers now. But first, for those of you who've cleaned peppers before and not oiled your hands ahead of time, this is really a very good way of keeping your hands from being burned. So, since the seeds are really very hot, I'll remove the seeds. Okay, just work my thumb in there and remove the seeds. And since I like to taste my chili pepper, I leave it in pretty nice size half-moon slices. Now I'm going to combine the ingredients in this salad. We have our papaya, our tomatoes, our chili pepper. And you can choose to chop the cilantro, but I like whole leaves of cilantro. I really am very fond of cilantro. I've previously made the dressing for this salad, the Thai vinaigrette, and I'd like to add a little bit of fresh ginger to it. And this dressing is so easy. You simply put it in a jar, shake it up, and it's ready to go. So now we're going to shake this up a little bit more. We have shallot and we have ginger in this dressing. I think I have just about all the other ingredients in there, as well as vegetable oil. Just toss it together. Work it in there. And I might add more dressing in a moment. And this is it. I'm going to show you how to wok sear an ono. With this ono, I'll be serving a banana curry with tea leaf wrapped steamed bananas. Cut a couple of portions of the ono off. I'm going to season these with an oil that I infused with lemon and cinnamon stick. I'll just take a small amount in my hand and rub. I rub the fillets with it. And from there, I like to season it with a little ground coriander. A sprinkling of salt, very evenly dispersed over the fillet. A little bit of white pepper here. Now that we've seasoned the ono, we'll remove it to the plate. This is a tea leaf, spelled T-I, not T-E-A. I'd like to show you how we make this ready to cook on. You just nick the rib and run your finger down the rib to remove it. Pull it off. Now I'd like to pass it over fire, just on the stove, a nice high fire, to make it pliable. You can probably see that the color changes once the heat touches it. It becomes shiny. At this stage, it's very easy to wrap bananas, fish, or even make leis out of. Little apple bananas, just place it in the center of the leaf. Now, I'd like to season it with this honey, cinnamon, mint, macadamia nut mixture I've made. Now, I'll fold the tea leaf over. You can just fold it back. You make a little pouch, tucking in the sides, and then carefully rolling it. You see it makes a very tight bundle. And it's ready to steam. So now I'm going to steam the banana that's been wrapped in tea leaf, our Chinese steamer. The other accompanying item is the banana curry. I've got olive oil heating up in this pan. I'm going to saute my onions, along with my shallot and garlic. Nice and soft. Now actually, before I add the bananas, I like to add my curry. You can really smell it. It starts to cook. Okay, this looks good. I'm going to add the bananas now. I've just peeled and cut them. Now the bananas will begin to soften as they cook. And just to help that process, I'll add a little bit of chicken stock. At this point, I do a little bit of the seasoning, but I really like to adjust the sweetness and the savory, the acid toward the end, when the bananas have really broken down. Let's check the bananas to make certain they're not overcooking. No, they feel fine. They feel great. I want to make certain that they're still somewhat firm, definitely not mushy. Now we're ready to add a little bit more chicken stock. And you see our bananas are starting to break down just the way we want them. If you find that they're not breaking down as quickly as you would like them to, you can always mash them with a potato masher. Just happen to have one here. But we're going to let this go ahead and cook because there's a certain consistency we're looking for. Thick, almost paste-like. I'm going to turn it on low and let it continue to cook. I'm going to add a little bit of lemon, just a little bit. And the rice vinegar is a very mild but acidic taste, quite different from the lemon. Just about ready to put this to the side. Remember, your moisture content in banana, when your banana begins to cool, it will definitely thicken up because of the starches. There you go, banana curry. Our wok's nice and hot, so it'll sear in the moisture of the ono. It's very important that you have it smoking. And it has to be smoking like this so that it cooks very rapidly. It keeps moisture in. And this carbon steel heats up very quickly. It's a wonderful conductor of heat. I'm going to flip this fish now and cook the other side. And I'll be able to tell just by touching it. Still a little undercooked, soft to the touch, it tends to spring. Once it gets a little firmer, we'll know that it's at the doneness that we want. I'm going to remove the fish and the bananas. Now that we have our bananas, we'll go ahead and put this dish together. It's a very simple presentation once you have everything prepared. Fish is centered in the plate. I like to cut my banana on the diagonal. A lot of surface area, you can see it. You can really see how it's cooked. Still firm, but thoroughly cooked through. Now I'll just place it, sort of prop it up. Nice spoonful of the banana curry. A simple garnish of the cinnamon stick. Mint. This is fresh mint from Waimea. This is a red torch ginger that we grow here in Hawaii. This is completed wok-seared ono with banana curry and tea leaf steamed banana.
Étouffée, probably one of the most popular Louisiana dishes, which means stewed. The components of étouffée, we have a mirepoix, we have seasoning, Creole seasoning, and we have its main ingredient. Creole seasoning, a salt base with paprika, garlic powder, and cayenne pepper. Just a little black pepper, onion powder, oregano, and thyme. We'll mix this up in the bowl, and then it's great when you do those great Creole dishes. We remove the head of the shrimp, the feet of the shrimp, and all of the shell, including the tail. Now, we want to take the shell, the head, and we want to reserve this so that we can make our shrimp stock. Now, importantly, with shrimp, is to clean the shrimp. We'll make a little cut down the back of the shrimp. This way, we can remove any of the digestive tract and simply just rinse it under water. Now, the next important ingredient of the étouffée is the mirepoix. But in New Orleans, a mirepoix, known as a Creole mirepoix, is bell pepper, celery, and garlic. And then we have our onion. Get our base, and we cut our medium dice cut for the onion. And then simply just come down. And now our next phase, let's go make a roux. We have this vegetable oil for our roux right to the smoking point where it begins to start smoking. And now we want to add in our flour. This is a technique of this dark roux mostly used in étouffées and gumbos. It's not a burnt roux. It is a brown roux. It has this chocolatey peanut butter smell, but you have to keep stirring it on the stove. We're at the right color, and we want to start our étouffée. And we want to cook the mirepoix now a couple of minutes with the roux. We begin to start adding the liquid. And the first liquid that we add, we'll take off the heat a little bit, is beer. And with our whisk, we begin to start whisking the roux into the liquid. And the reason why we're doing that is so it doesn't get lumpy. And now we get it smooth. We're going to add our bay leaves, about 3 or 4 bay leaves. Work those bay leaves in. And now the next liquid is our shrimp stock from the shells that we reserved. We made a shrimp stock. And we'll slowly start whisking the liquid into our base. Now we're going to season some of our Creole seasoning that we have. Hot sauce, a Louisiana hot sauce. Worcestershire sauce, which not only adds to the color, but also to the flavor of the étouffée base. A little bit of salt. We'll slowly whisk all of those ingredients in. You can see it's starting to come to a boil. And at that time, that's when we're going to add our shrimp. But before we add the shrimp, you got to season them. We add some more of that Creole seasoning on our shrimp. And now we start adding the shrimp. You really want to cook the shrimp maybe about 3 to 5 minutes, depending on the size, until they turn color, this pink or red color. Ah, the smell of étouffée. Now we're going to get some of our shrimp. And here's one that was in the shell. And now we add some of the sauce to be eaten with the rice, some chopped green onion, and again some of our Creole seasoning. That's a true Louisiana étouffée.
The dish we're going to be doing today is a curry of spinach and eggplant. I spent a fair amount of time in India, and one of the things I was most amazed by was all the different spices that they would use in making up a curry. So I'm going to begin with using fresh cracked pepper. Now that's certainly something that's critical in every curry. A little bit of cloves, a little bit of coriander, cayenne powder. Cumin is one of the heavier ingredients we use in almost all curries. Turmeric, of course, one of the most beautiful ingredients. That makes the basis of many different curries. Now, we're going to be using Japanese eggplant, but you can use domestic, the larger eggplant. We tend to prefer the Japanese eggplant because then you get skin on all of the pieces. We'll cut off the ends. So I'm going to cut it in quarters, and then I'm going to cut it in quarter moons. Now what we do is add this eggplant, add a little bit of kosher salt to the eggplant. Then I'm going to mix this. And what this will do is the large kernels of kosher salt will draw out the water from the eggplant. Then what we'll do is weight it down with a plate, and we'll let that sit for about 20-30 minutes till all of the water is removed from the eggplant.
Meanwhile, I'm going to dice an onion.
The next ingredient we'll be using is the spinach. What we'll do is place it into a large bowl of water so all the spinach is immersed.
And this is how we wash all the greens in the kitchen. Spinach or lettuces, letting gravity do all the work, pulling all the dirt down to the bottom of the bowl.
So you see I'm pulling it up out of the water. Then the final step of where we're going to go is to dry the eggplant completely, because this is a very important step, that you make sure the eggplant is patted completely dry. Now at this point what we're going to do is go over the stove and start the cooking process.
We're going to go ahead and toast these black mustard seeds, which we have a pan dry. We're going to saute them real gently. What's going to happen is the oils are going to come out of the mustard seeds and they're going to start to pop and turn gray. So you can see, you can smell the mustard essence, and then you can hear them popping and you can see how they're turning. We're going to pour it into a dish and reserve it for later.
I'm going to use a heavy bottom pan now. This is going to be for sauteing our eggplant. I want to get my pan good and hot. Then I'm going to add in my clarified butter till we get it so it's smoking.
We're going to go ahead and add the eggplant. There. Now that's the sound you want to hear.
So we want to continue cooking that until the eggplant is really soft. It's important with eggplant that you cook it all the way through. Then I'm going to remove it. And then at this point, then what we're going to do is bring a heavy bottom pan on so that we can then continue and start sauteing the onions.
And as you start to cook the onions in the hot butter, they're going to do some caramelizing, which is the idea. Now after they start to sweat a little bit, we add the salt. And these are going to sweat and turn a deep golden brown. That's going to take about 10 minutes.
Okay, now this is perfect. You can see here we're beginning to get that caramelization. Now at this point would be when we would want to add the garlic and the ginger first. As soon as you begin to smell that, that's when you want to go ahead and add the spices in.
You want to cook them until they're well cooked, but you don't want to burn them. So it takes about 2 or 3 minutes, and you should really stay right here with the pot.
So we add the water. We're going to bring it back up to a boil. And we're going to add in a little bit of our brown sugar into this. And at that point, we're going to get the sugar mixed in here so it starts to dissolve. We're going to cook this maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and at that point,
the spinach.
Now at this point, we wouldn't want to cover the curry, because when you're cooking green vegetables, you want to cook it without a top, because if you cook green vegetables with a top, the vegetable will start to lose its color.
And this will take a minute to wilt down until everything's pretty well cooked. Right about there, we're going to add the eggplant and the mustard seeds. It does need to cook probably 5 or 6, even 10 minutes to get all the flavors to mix well together.
Now here's how Susan and Mary Sue would serve a complete vegetarian buffet. The main course is our eggplant spinach curry accompanied by basmati rice, and by a spicy concoction of orange lentils known in India as dal.
Today we're going to start with a 3-melon salad with Thai shrimp and peanut sauce.
One of the reasons I love this dish is because it takes melon, and you're able to use melon in a way that's very different than what we traditionally do. We begin with a Thai fish sauce. Now this could be made from dried shrimp, dried oysters, anchovies, and if this is not available for you, you can always use soy sauce as a replacement. The next ingredient is a coconut palm sugar.
Now this is similar to brown sugar in flavor, but it's a little milder, and brown sugar makes a fine substitute.
Now the next ingredient are these keeper lime leaves. Now these have an incredible bouquet, but if you can't get a hold of this, you can always use fresh lime zest. We take fresh lime juice. Now whenever I'm squeezing a fresh piece of citrus, I roll it to release the juices. And then if I don't have a juicer around, I take my kitchen fork, put it into the piece of fruit, squeeze the fruit, and turn the fork. Now often this is handy because sometimes your limes will be so hard you can't get all the juice out.
And then the next ingredients that go into the Thai melon salad are the toasted peanuts. These are the unsalted peanuts. And then the dried shrimp. Now we're going to chop these really finely, grind them up till we get a nice powder. And then we're going to go ahead and add the peanuts. We just want to have a rough chop of the peanut, actually.
Sometimes you have to be careful. If you do it too much, the oil becomes like peanut butter, and so that's why you add it at the end. I'm going to stir this, and sometimes there may be additional juice that you need to add if the peanuts and the shrimp absorb too much. You want to make sure the sugar's all dissolved.
First we're going to chop garlic. So I take a clove of peeled garlic, and I want to use a rocking motion. And I want to go ahead and slice real thin slices. And I'm using as a guide this middle knuckle on my finger, keeping my thumb in the back and then rocking the knife to go right through the garlic, and then turn it and chop it through the other direction. And then keep chopping here to make it a nice fine chop. And the serrano chilies. Now these are a very spicy chili, and the seeds are the spiciest part. Again, using a rocking motion and cutting at an angle, we cut thin slices with the seeds in.
The next ingredient I want to talk about is fresh cilantro. So I'm just picking some of the leaves off and some of the stems. Then I'm going to chop with a rocking motion, being careful not to over chop so that we lose all the flavor on the board, that we actually keep it in the cilantro itself. Then I'm going to mix, and that's going to be the end of our sauce.
And I'm going to start on the melon. So what you want to do, it's hard to cut a rolling target. So the first thing you do is slice off the ends, and then it gives you a flat side to work on. You want to get the rind off, and you want to go not too deep, but deep enough so that you're down to the nice ripe, flavorful melon. You go ahead and cut it in half. There. And then you want to scrape the seeds out. There we go. And then we're going to dice it. So we have the cantaloupe and watermelon cut already. And we're going to add to it the honeydew.
You want to make sure that you get plenty of sauce on the melon so that when you go to actually serve, you can toss the melon and you make sure that all of the melon is coated with a little bit of the peanuts and shrimp.
And the final garnish are a few cilantro leaves sprinkled on top.
I'm doing le magret de canard à la ficelle, ou translate by the breast of duck with a string. First thing I'm doing is just cutting the little fillet out, and what we call tenderloin, and I'm going to take out a little bit of grease from the breast. I'm cutting into the skin just to have the cooking a little bit better on the other side, because you see this one is a lean side and this one is a greasy side. I'm going to cut it onto the grease. Why? Just to have the heat enter inside the meat. What I'm going to do now, just take the salt and pepper on the top, on the skin, and on the meat. I'm going to add some herb. Here we have some thyme. If you don't have any thyme, you can go with a little bit of rosemary, because rosemary is very strong. The thyme is more southern. What I want to do, I take a string. What I'm going to do is just have the string into some oil. Like that, you are safe. The string never gonna burn. Just taking the string under the breast and tie it closely, like that the meat is not loose. You see, it's exactly like like a sausage. I'm taking the end of the string and pass over the other one, like that. Look at that, beautiful. And what we're going to do, we're going to hang like that and turn it, and it's ready to go. To do this recipe, you need to have a beautiful fire. What you do, you take the string, and you have the magret around half a foot from the bottom. Now, it's going to take about 20 to 25 minutes to cook. And you baste every 4 or 5 minutes. And now, look at the beautiful magret of duck. What we're going to do, take out the string. First, we're going to present the magret with some porcini mushroom, just sauté with some garlic and thyme. Okay, now I'm cutting the magret of duck. Arrange on the top of the mushroom, and you still have on the bottom of the plate some juice, and this juice is very, very important. Going to be poured on the top of the magret. Look what a beautiful plate you got.
We're going to begin the chocolate dessert by melting the chocolate and the butter together over a water bath. We'll just mix that together a little bit. Just kind of smooth it out. And on the same water bath, we're just going to put the eggs, the yolks, sift the sugar over the top. And we just want to beat these up to get a little bit of volume to the yolks before we go into the machine and mix it. Now you're not looking to whip these here, you're just kind of like dissolving the sugar halfway. That's good. And now we'll go to the mixer. We're going to put our yolks in the mixer. It should take about 2 to 3 minutes, no more than that. Once you got it at about double the volume, I'll just show you that's kind of a creamy color now. I'm going to take and add the chocolate in there. And we're just going to incorporate the chocolate here. We don't want to mix it too much to break down the eggs. So you get a nice creamy mixture there. Now for the whites, we're just going to break these up slightly to start with. When you're whipping whites by hand, you want to have a nice clean bowl. Make sure the bowl's clean. The egg whites should be at room temperature. Now we're going to break them up and get it quite like a little froth to them before we start adding sugar in there. Now once you start beating the egg whites, you don't really want to stop. You want to keep the volume going. Once you get to the soft peaks, I'm just going to fold it into the chocolate mixture. I'm going to put about half of it in at one time. Work that in. Now you want to keep the volume, but you want to incorporate the whites in so that it's nice and even. Put the rest of the whites in. Just kind of lift it from the bottom up. We're going to just sift our tarragon over top. Now the tarragon adds a little exotic flair to the dish. The tarragon doesn't take over the chocolate flavor. It's just something that's like an essence. And what we're going to go into is some buttered stainless steel rings. You want to fill these molds about 2/3 full. And now we go into the oven. Preheated at 375. For the chocolate dessert today, we're going to do a little delicate chocolate tuile. It looks a little complicated. It's really very simple. We take a plastic template that I just cut out of this cottage cheese bucket or any kind of plastic container. And I got a little thumb tab there to hang on to it with. You take the batter, hang on to your tab. You just take one motion there. We're going to put these into a 300-degree oven. They take about 7 to 8 minutes. Once these come out of the oven, you have to let them cool for about 30 seconds to a minute, just so they start to set up. And what we do is we're just going to mold these over top of this bottle. I mean, once it's set there, a couple of seconds, it's nice and crisp and very delicate. I'll let these cool for a couple of minutes now, and what we're going to do is just lift it over to the plate. Now this is kind of like a fallen souffle, actually, and we're going to serve it warm. Now, we're going to serve it with a little canal of whipped cream, just sweet whipped cream. You need a nice hot spoon to do this, so you just dip it in the hot water. A nice football shape, and we're going to put one right on top there. Now for the sauce, I got it in this nice handy squeeze bottle. You can just kind of decorate in whatever sense you want here. And to garnish with, we're going to use some of the crisp wheels and a little fresh mint. Just put a little finishing touch of cocoa on the top. Just a light coating there. Venison has become much more popular, and with farm-raised animals like this, they're much milder than what we're used to in the past. We're going to take the coarse pepper and put a good amount on there. Again, you want to get like a crust on this. And also take the coarse salt, turn them over, do the same thing on the other side. Now this is a professional meat pounder. We're going to pound these down. We're not going to pound it flat. We just want to like flatten it out and embed the pepper into the meat. For the sauce today, we're going to use some sun-dried sour cherries that we've got plumped up here in the water. And then we're going to take our shallots, mince them. And the next thing, we've got a little Italian parsley here. I'm just going to mince that up. And we don't want this parsley too fine, so we're just going to kind of rough chop it. Okay, now to saute this, what we're actually trying to do is sear the meat. You want to just use enough oil to film the pan. And what we're trying to do here is like form a crust on the bottom of the meat. Now once you've seared the side for about 2 to 3 minutes, we're going to just take and turn it over. The important thing is to keep the venison nice and rare. 2 minutes on a side. I'm going to show you a little way to test it. You take your hand and just gently squeeze there and press on your thumb. You know, we're trying to keep these rare, so it should be just a little bit softer than what you feel there. So now in the pan, you're going to do the same thing. Okay, we got them about rare. Now we're going to take them out of the pan. I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit here. Then we're going to drain most of the fat off of the pan. We're going to take our shallots. You're not really trying to brown the shallots too much. Just kind of bring up any juice that's left there. And what I was saying before, a little Pinot Noir. We're going to use about 3/4 of a cup. Deglaze the pan. It's essentially use a nice fruity wine, you know, like has a lot of flavor again with the cherries. I'm going to take the chicken stock. Just let this reduce for 1 second. Get all the juices up in the bottom of the pan. Now that's the flavor that's going to go into the sauce too. We got the plum cherries going in here. And the parsley. And we're just going to take and reduce this down by about half. Now once you've got it reduced by about half, you're going to take and add the butter. Kind of monte that in there. Just want to basically melt the butter into it, which acts as a thickener and also has a nice mellows out the sauce a little bit. And then we're going to put the mignons back in the sauce and kind of baste them for a minute. Now once the mignons are heated up nicely, we're going to go and plate the dish. We're going to serve this today with a little butternut squash flan. Drizzle it around the outside and over top. And a little chervil sprig on top there.
We're going to do a puff paste, a classic puff paste, and that you can use for hundreds of different things. Flour, this is all-purpose flour, and a dash of salt in it. Butter, water. We start with a pound of flour, and as you can see, I dip that directly into the bin, and I come out with 3 cups of flour. 3 cups of flour is a pound of flour if you take it the way I'm taking it. So I have a pound of flour here, a little dash of salt, and now I put some water in it, and I start with about a good cup of water. It depends where you are, depending whether it's very humid or it's very dry, and that will determine the amount of moisture in there. So you want that dough first, and I need a little more water here. Okay. until it practically forms into a ball. And we're going to roll that on the table. So I need a little bit of flour to roll that into a large rectangle, approximately 3/8 of an inch thick. A rolling pin, there is different type of rolling pin. I tend to go toward that type of rolling pin, which is straight, equal size all over. But believe me, if you were to do a big puff paste, like 2 or 3 pounds of puff paste, you'll probably get one with ball bearing, you know. And I have 3/4 of a pound of butter here. And I'm going to arrange my butter on 2/3 of the dough. And what I do at that point is to take 1/3 of the dough which is not covered, cover that on top, and bring that back on the other end. So now I have already started the process of puff paste. So I break it like this and extend it to, again, a large rectangle. Now the dough has to be cold, everything has to be cold. It's better, otherwise the butter may tend to break right through the dough, and you don't want this. So lift it up to be sure that it's sliding underneath. You have to roll it this way as well as this way. And now I have that long rectangle. And now we fold the dough by bringing it in the center on each hand and folding it in 2 again. What does that give me? It gives me 4 layers of dough. So you work by multiple of 4. When you get to a dough which is totally finished, that is, I'm rolling it 4 times, each time folding, I will have, believe it or not, close to 1,500 layers of bread dough and fat. Now, I grab it, refrigerate it. I have one here which has been refrigerated. So I did exactly as I did for the first one. Let it rest an hour or so. Roll it again twice, fold it. Now it's ready to be used. As you can see here, I extend it. I'm going to cut it in 2. I have more than enough with this. Actually, I will only use half of that by the time I have all the trimming around. Now look at that. I want to roll this to 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to cut about, not quite in the middle, a bit of a smaller piece here. And as you see, it's a bit elastic. It starts shrinking. Putting it on my cookie sheet, leaving this one on the side. What we do here, 1 layer in the bottom, and we put something in between. I'm putting aluminum foil here to hold the dough. And what I may do first is to cut a little bit of the dough here that I need for decoration. You want to wet this outside with water to be sure that it's going to glue well. Then roll gently your dough on top of the rolling pin and bring that back on top here. Now what I do, I actually pull that up and extend it to make like a tent, if you want, you know. What I'm going to do here is to use a round thing and put it there to get about my size, about here. So I cut it with this. I can remove it now. So we could press the outside. Maybe I'll use a fork to be sure that it's nicely glued together. Now you can spend a lot of time now if you want doing decoration, or you can use it directly like that in the oven. Here I can cut a little bit of the side here, and then of course you want to glue it with something, and I have an egg here to give me the shine that I need. We're going to glue that little piece here. So you want to be sure that there is a glaze all over. And it's much better to do it a little bit ahead and refrigerate it before you cook it. And now the best part, of course, is to serve it. As you can see here, I have a beautiful brown color all over. So what we want to do now, with a knife, you can even hear it, how crisp it is. I will cut that very thin lid, you know. Oh, here it is. And you can see the whole thing will come out. And that you can use for hundreds of different things.
Oh, I love chocolate. Today we are going to do a chocolate cake together. If you have the chance to use a chocolate block like this one, like the bakers or the chef use in a restaurant, don't use those expensive knives to chip the chocolate. I use the oyster knife. And then take a big chunk of it. And when you have enough chocolate for your chocolate mousse, you take the chocolate and you have to melt the chocolate over a bain-marie. See, bain-marie or double boiler, it's a casserole, and you have to have a bowl who fit well into the casserole, and some water, simmer, and you melt the chocolate. And when the chocolate is melted, you have to take the chocolate away from the bain-marie. Okay, now you have to work on the cake. To make the cake, we need some sponge cake, or genoise in French. Okay, we need a mold in the shape of a dome, like a ball. And we have to butter the ball with some creamy butter. Use lots of butter. Make sure the cake won't stick to the pan, otherwise it will be a disaster. And then you have to flour the cake. Tap the mold to remove the excess of flour. Now we're going to do the genoise batter. 4 eggs inside of the machine. 1 pinch of salt that bring up the flavors. 4 ounces of sugar. Now you have to whip the eggs. Okay, for about 5 minutes until they're light and fluffy and triple in the volume. All right, I think it's fluffy. Okay, you have to remove the whip. You have to remove the mousse of the genoise to a different bowl. You add sifted flour, go all the way to the bottom. Here we are, mix well on the side. Okay, the bowl is ready. You have to fill the bowl. Oh, it looks great. I think my oven is at 350 degrees, and we are going to cook the cake for 35 minutes. Here we are. I think it's ready. Let me touch the cake. Perfect. And then you have to check with that little toothpick. I think the toothpick is completely dry. I mean, the cake is cooked, it's baked. Now you have to unmold it. Here we are. Perfect. Now you have to wait 2 to 3 hours until the cake is completely cold. Okay, now I'm doing the whipped cream. I whip the whipped cream over ice to make sure it stays cold, because if the whipped cream gets warm, it will be impossible to whip it. Okay? Instead, I'm doing the French style. I use the 8. I'm doing like an 8 number. It goes faster with the cream. And don't over whip the cream. Okay, it's enough. See? And here we have the chocolate. It's warm. You add half of the cream first. And you mix it. See? You mix half of it. And then you have to add the remaining of the whipped cream. Don't be afraid, but just mix it. Well, here we have the cake. It's cold now. And we're going to cut in 3 layers. See? Hold the cake and turn the cake. This way is a fabulous way. Cut it straight. Gosh, it's great, huh? I'm a good chef. My mother is proud of me. And you have to turn the cake here because remove that crust. That crust is too hard. You won't be able to soak it if you leave the crust. The one thing you have to prep the orange juice, and we have to add the sugar. And you know, one thing is good is to add some Grand Marnier. You know, as much as you want. And then you take your brush and you soak it well. I laid the bowl with some saran wrap. This will be easier to remove the cake when it's cold. Now we're going to add some chocolate mousse. Some raspberry, because it's great raspberry. As much as you want. And then the second layer. and you push it down. And you soak again. But sometimes you feel like you would go like this. And then the remaining of the mousse. Okay, here we are. And the raspberry. Alright, the last slice of sponge cake. And we soak it again. And you close the cake with the plastic. Push it down a little bit. Pressure. And you have to cool the cake for a few hours before you finish it. Here we are, the cake is cold. But first you have to unwrap the paper. You have to remove the paper around to make sure it'll be easier to remove it from the mold. What you do, lift it, and now we're going to prepare the chocolate wrapping. To do that, we need some space here on the marble, and you have to some water on the marble to make sure that the plastic will stick to the marble. Here, the plastic wrap. And we're going to spread some chocolate over the plastic, and with your spoon, spread the chocolate around and stay in the plastic. Look. Bring the mold back and take the chocolate over the mold and push the chocolate cake inside. And now you have to take the plastic careful. Here we are. Alright, now we are going to do some lemon leaf. We're going to dip them in the chocolate. First we did clean them and dry them. We're going to dip the chocolate on the shiny side. 5 or 6 for the decoration of the cake. We are going to cool the cake and the leaf until the chocolate is set to be able to finish the decoration. Here's now the fun part of the cake. You have to remove the plastic. Okay? Careful when you remove the plastic. Make sure you don't breaking the chocolate. Add some cocoa powder over the cake. Then you take the chocolate and put it over a beautiful platter. It'd be nice to add some raspberry. Then take some raspberry sauce and you put all around the cake. The chocolate leaves that we made earlier. Be careful when you move it. Just for finishing touch, some raspberry.
But now we're in for another great chocolate treat, Michel Richard's meltingly addictive hot chocolate truffles. The filling is chocolate ganache. Here it is. This is melted chocolate with heavy cream. And then you put it in the fridge until it's cold. And then when the ganache is cold enough, you scoop out gobs of it and roll it into one sort of rough 1-inch balls. And then you freeze them. And then we're ready, Michel, to fry them up.
Here we are, the truffles. We have some flour here. We have 2 eggs. We have some breadcrumbs, very fine and dry. Some sugar. Some cinnamon. We mix 50-50 of breadcrumbs and sugar and some cinnamon. We're going to beat the eggs with a pinch of salt. The salt adds to liquefy the eggs. We're going to roll the truffle in the flour. Okay, you have to take the excess of flour and then you roll them in the eggs and then in the bread mixture. You roll them in your hand. Make sure that the breading stick to it, and we do it 2 times. One more time in the flour, in the eggs, and you're going to have to freeze those truffle for a few hours again. Okay, we are ready now to fry the hot truffle. We have some oil, peanut oil, 350 degrees to check if the oil is hot enough. You can use a piece of bread. And the bread within few seconds should get brown. See? You only have to fry the truffle for maybe 30 seconds because you don't want the truffle to explode in your oil. You see, we are creating a little caramel crust on it. See, here we are, finished. Let's taste one. You break the nice little crust of caramel. See, it's melting. It's like having a nice caramel crust with some hot melted chocolate. Bon appétit.
The dough from the olive bread is very different than the dough that I use for the focaccia. I'm starting with my flour in the bowl of the food processor and adding the starter, a little fresh thyme, and some wheat germ. Now with this olive bread I use two kinds of olives. I use oil-cured Moroccan olives and also Kalamata olives. I'm going to turn on the machine and begin to slowly add the water and follow it with the addition of the salt and let it process until it goes around the center blade. I'm going to allow the dough to rest a bit in the machine, 5-10 minutes, let the water continue to be absorbed by the flour. The dough's rested for about 10 minutes already, and so now I'm going to let it process about 20 to 30 seconds more before I add my olives. That looks about right. Kalamata and the oil cured. Take the dough out of the bowl and finish the kneading by hand. When kneading the dough, it's good to lift it up, slap it down, and rotate it. Also, I've learned by the hard way to try to use only one hand in kneading, keeping the other hand free and clean in case something so important as a telephone rings or something. So when your dough is sufficiently kneaded, you'll be able to tell by the smoothness of the surface of the dough. The dough has become a little bit more elastic and a little bit more firm. Gather it together and place it in a lightly oiled bowl. Cover it with plastic and allow it to sit for 2.5 hours until it doubles in bulk. Now that the bread has risen a good 2 to 2.5 times its size, we're ready to give it its final shape. Another way to tell if the bread has risen, besides going by the volume, is by pressing your finger into it, and if it doesn't spring immediately back, it means that it is ready to be shaped. Turn the bread gently out of the mixing bowl. Now I would like to make 2 loaves of bread out of this dough, and I'm simply going to eyeball it. The basket that I'm going to put the shaped dough into is a cloth-lined basket. They call these a bonneton in French. To shape your bread into a boule, which is merely a tucking of the dough into the center, it's easy to start that way by just lifting the bread up and tucking it all to the center, trying to get an even thickness all the way around. This helps you to form the ball shape that you're going to end up with. Once you get your dough into your center, you can begin to roll the 4 corners also into the center. So once you've gotten a taut ball, lift it up and place it in your cloth-lined basket. And then this we're going to cover again with plastic wrap and let it sit out at room temperature for about 2 hours until you feel the dough beginning to move again, and then we're going to refrigerate it overnight. As it's been fermenting and as you've been sleeping, the bread has been developing in both flavor and texture. Yeah, that's fine. It should be about 72 or 74 degrees before it goes into the oven. Turn the bread out gently onto the peel, and we're going to score it with a razor blade. You can also use a sharp knife. Don't forget to spritz the oven. Get a lot of moisture in there. Once it's baked for 45 minutes, you'll get a wonderful crusty brown loaf of olive bread. This is truly one of my favorite breads. I'm going to show you a sourdough starter that produces what I think is the best bread of all. This is a starter that's made with grapes, water, and flour. What you need to do is you need to tie up a pound of grapes in some cheesecloth, and then you need to bash it around a little to release some of the juices. Okay, we're going to mix up a slurry of some flour and water, and then submerge the grapes into this mixture. Cover it and leave it at room temperature for a week. I want to show you what you're going to see throughout the week as your grape, water, and flour mixture takes on a life of its own. After the first 2 days, what happens is there's a slight separation. The alcohol from the fermentation rises to the top. By the fourth day, just 2 days later, you can see a huge change in this mixture. The smell is starting to smell very, very cheese-like almost, kind of not too pleasant. You see a lot of bubbling activity. The bag of grapes have deflated. And by the 6th day, great changes have taken place. My bag full of grapes is completely deflated. The color of the grapes have oozed into the starter itself. I have a separation between the alcohol fermentation and the density of the flour. The smell is strong. The taste is strong and I find quite delicious. However, it's hungry. This mixture is alive. It hasn't eaten for 6 days. It needs flour. You need to discard and squeeze out the grapes. Here in front of me, I have the starter minus the grapes and my food, water, and flour. Incorporate the flour and water into your starter. Cover it and put it in a warm place in your kitchen, and in about 8 to 10 hours your starter will be active and healthy and bubbly and ready to be turned into a loaf of bread. I have my bread flour in the food processor, and to it I'm going to add my healthy sourdough starter and a little bit of already activated yeast. And with the machine running, I'm going to be adding my water and milk, my olive oil, and lastly, the salt. I'll be processing this for about a minute after the dough actually comes together in a ball around the center. We're going to let this sit for about 5 minutes so the flour can absorb the excess water and then reprocess it to finish the kneading process. Now I've transferred my dough to a well-oiled bowl. I'm going to be covering it with plastic and letting it rise for about 2 hours to develop both its flavor, its texture, and the growth that it needs. Over here I have a dough that I've already gone through that rising process or fermenting process. You can see the beautiful network I have. As I peel off the plastic, you can just imagine when this dough is baked, when you slice into it, the wonderful hole structure that it will have.
Nancy Silverton makes all kinds of breads from the same dough. She sets aside half of the dough, and she's going to turn it into focaccias.
I'm using a round cutter to cut out the dough for the focaccia. These focaccia are a good way to be able to combine your baking talents with your cooking talents. As you see, we have a beautiful assortment of roasted vegetables. I'm putting on some bitter, sturdy greens as a decoration for the edges of the focaccia. Once you get the lettuces around the outside of the dough, it's time to garnish them with really anything you really like. I love the roasted peppers in combination with the goat cheese, and so that's what I'm going to make my first one. And maybe a little Parmesan on top. Another great combination are these roasted boiling onions. These are roasted in the oven with rosemary oil and salt and pepper. Maybe a little fresh thyme and a little more Parmesan. Now a very unusual one I'm going to do is a black or red seedless grape. This one I garnish with a little bit of sprinkled anise, a little granulated sugar, and some rosemary sprigs. I think I'm going to add a little poppy seeds to the goat cheese and the pepper. So these I'll put into the oven. They'll bake for about 35 to 40 minutes. These focaccias are really wonderful just out of the oven as is. They're sort of a sister or a cousin to the pizza. But oftentimes we let them cool down and slice them in half and fill them with some greens with a simple vinaigrette, maybe some more roasted vegetables inside, and they make really fantastic sandwiches.
We go to do a flambacure, a tarte flambée, and I use puff pastry, but you can use other pastry too. We roll it out. We have to do it very fine because it's a tart which cooks pretty fast. All right, now we are thin enough. Now we cut 4 pieces. But also, you can do it a whole one if you want to do them not individual. We have to oil the plaque, otherwise they stick when they bake. Just a little bit. Here we go. We have to prick it, the fork, and now we refrigerate it. All right, for the topping, we need cottage cheese. Half a cup. In France, we use fromage blanc, but here the closest is cottage cheese, which is very good. So that's smooth enough. Now we add the creme fraiche, half a cup also, 1 tablespoon of flour, little salt, pepper, and about 2 tablespoons of oil. Smooth enough. Yes, it's perfect. And we have our cream. And now we are ready to prepare the bacon and the onion. The bacon has to be cut very thin because it doesn't stay too long in the oven. See, very thin. Now we cut the onions. Also the onions very thin. We have to saute now the onions and the bacon with a little oil, but we start with the bacon because we want to get the fat out a little bit. So we just saute it for a few seconds even. But we don't cook it too much, just a little bit because it goes back in the oven again. We add the onions now. Again, we don't want the onions to be sauteed too much. They still stay a little crisp. Well, we are ready now to assemble the tarte flambée. So, we spread the cream over. Don't go completely to the edge, because when it bakes, it would overlap otherwise. You have the same amount on each, and we are ready to bake it in the oven. And here we have the tarte flambée.
First, I would like to show you how to prepare the poussin for grilling and for marinating. Turn the bird over. Take my poultry shears. I'm going to cut the backbone out. Start on one side, cut down to the neck, all the way down to the front, and then on the other side do the same thing. And you can just lift out the backbone. Turn the bird over. Give it a good whack like that so that it flattens it out a little bit more. Then you just have to deal with the wings and the legs. So I'm just going to truss those under, just bend them right under the chicken like that. Then for the legs, I'm going to cut a slit in the back of the skin here and put your finger through, make sure there's enough room, and just take the end of the leg like that and push it through the hole. Then take the other one and do the same thing. I'm going to marinate the poussin in a little bit of olive oil and fresh thyme. So you put the poussin in the dish, moisten it, rub the thyme in and the olive oil, and leave that for an hour before you grill it. Now we're ready to go to the grill. I've built a nice big fire, and you wait until the coals have died down just to the point where they have an even white ash all over them. I'm going to cook poussin first, breast side down on the fire, because I just want to seize them up a little bit and then turn them over so that most of the cooking occurs on this side, the bone side, so that it doesn't dry out the breast meat. And 5 minutes before the poussin are cooked, take the thyme that's been marinating with the little birds and throw it on the fire, and you get a wonderful flavor from the aromatic smoke. With the grilled poussin, I'm going to serve a warm vegetable salad, and the vegetables are dressed in a tomato vinaigrette, which has some salt and freshly ground pepper, because that has the best flavor and perfume, and then lemon juice, freshly chopped shallot, freshly chopped fresh herbs, and those can be any of the soft leaf variety like basil and marjoram, tarragon, and then the chopped up seeded and skinned tomatoes, and olive oil. Now, this is a wonderful dressing. It's so simple. Now we're just going to put the vegetables into the vinaigrette and toss those together. This time we're going to add them to the platter with the poussin. And then I'll just take some of the juices and put those around the platter, some of it on the poussin. Really is a wonderful dish for a summer lunch or a picnic, wherever you are. Few things are more wonderful than a perfectly roasted chicken, but the challenge is to get the moist meat, crisp skin, and the breast and the legs all cooked at the same time. Take out the fat from the cavity and put that aside. Now I'm going to season the cavity with salt and pepper. Put in a few of the garlic cloves that have been actually unpeeled. Take some lemon, squeeze that inside and rub it around and put the lemon inside. And then I'm going to truss the chicken. Take about a 3-foot long piece of string and lift it up around the front of the breast like that, down around each of the wings, then bring it around under the legs like that, cross it over, and then just tie up very neatly the legs there under the breast, and just do a knot. Before I put it in the casserole, put in half the garlic in the bottom and half of the fresh rosemary. Then I'm going to rub some of the lemon and lemon juice, then just a little bit of olive oil for flavor. Then the chicken fat that you've kept on the side, just flatten it out with your fist and put it on the breast of the chicken. Then I'm going to put the chicken in the casserole. Now I can just put the rest of the rosemary in here and the garlic cloves, scatter them around. I take some more of the lemons, squeeze them over the chicken, just a last little bit of salt over the top of the chicken. Again, the secret here is to cover the chicken in the beginning, in the first part of the cooking, and uncover it at the last to crisp the skin. The reason this chicken looks so golden brown and delicious is because I took the cover off the casserole for about the last 15 minutes of cooking. Now to carve it, I have to take the trussing string off. Now I'm going to carve some pieces off the breast, and I'm placing these slices of the breast on the watercress, which I've dressed in some of the garlic that I cooked with the chicken, mix that with the chicken juices. Then I would take the garlic that was cooked in the casserole with the chicken and scatter those around on the top. And don't forget, of course, those wonderful roasting juices which have been heated up and served for the sauce.
If you're not mad about canned beets, try fresh beets. They have a very special taste all their own, and they're one of our very best root vegetables. Alice begins her unique salad with 2 cups of arugula, also known as rocket lettuce. Fresh beets in a variety of colors are cooked tender in the oven, cooled, and then peeled. The next ingredient are these beautiful blood oranges, but regular oranges work well too. Alice begins her vinaigrette by removing the zest from the oranges with this handheld grater. Then she slices off the ends of the oranges. Carefully she trims all the way around the outside edge of the oranges to remove their peel and bitter-tasting pith. She slices the oranges about 1/4 inch thick and sets them aside while making her vinaigrette. Using this sturdy wooden juicer, Alice squeezes the juice from the oranges directly into a mixing bowl. The next ingredient is a fresh shallot, and Alice has a great technique for mincing that. After cutting the shallot in half and trimming off one end, she peels back the shallot skin but leaves the other end intact. This makes it easy to hold on to. Then, using a very sharp knife, she slices the shallot crosswise into thirds. She makes 3 or 4 cuts through the shallot, and finally minces the pieces into very small dice. Alice prefers this method because she says none of the flavorful juices are lost on the cutting board. The shallots are transferred to the bowl of orange juice, where she combines it with a pinch of salt and about 1/4 cup of sherry wine vinegar. Finally, she whisks in about 1/2 cup of her very best extra virgin olive oil. The beets are dressed with vinaigrette in separate bowls, thus keeping the dark-colored ones from staining the others. After spooning the beets over the lettuce, she arranges the oranges on top and adds a final sprinkling of toasted walnut halves. Doesn't that look spectacular? We bought this fennel today. Now what are you going to do with it?
This is a wonderful winter vegetable. It's really my favorite, and we're going to make a fennel salad by slicing the fennel very, very thinly.
Now, one question is, this is so young and tender, but in the market we get great big ones.
Well, I think it doesn't really matter so much with fennel. You can use it at all different stages. It's just that when it gets very, very big, there's a kind of a core in the center, and you might want to take that out. That little part right there, you can just cut it out with the point of the knife, like that, and slice from there when it's very big.
That's a good idea.
But when it's little like that, you just kind of want to take off the ends, and you can always use this lovely greenery to stuff into a piece of fish or chop up and sprinkle on the top. And I just slice the fennel like that, very, very thinly, on this a very inexpensive Japanese mandolin. And I'm just going to lay that around and put a little salt and a little pepper on each layer. So put a little drizzle of oil on each layer. And then the mushrooms, I think the really important thing about the mushrooms is that they're very, very fresh and they're tight, completely tight. And then on this layer, I'm going to put a little bit of salt again, pepper, drizzle of oil. Okay, we just need to squeeze a little lemon. Maybe you want to squeeze a little over the salad while I'm doing the cheese. And this is Parmesan cheese.
Real Parmesan.
Real Parmesan cheese. And I think when doing a salad, it's so simple that all the ingredients need to be very tasty and of some good quality.
Now, are we going to taste it and see if it's any good? For a dish of warm, wilted greens, Alice will use a combination such as kale, broccoli rabe, mustard greens, spinach, turnip or beet tops, Swiss chard, and a few thin slices of prosciutto for excitement. After picking over and washing the greens and leaving them a little damp, Alice strips the leaves from their center stalk. Then she chops the leaves into large pieces. 2 tablespoons of good olive oil go into the saute pan, and about half the greens and a little water. And she covers and cooks a minute or 2 until they sink down. Now she piles in the rest. Adds a little dribble of water and a good pinch of salt. She covers the pan and lets it cook about 15 minutes, shaking and tossing now and then. When they're wilted and tender, they're done. Then let them cool until you can squeeze out the excess liquid with your bare hands. Meanwhile, the vinaigrette. First, the garlic. It needs pureeing. For that, Alice has 2 methods. Here's her ingenious fork method. She rubs the peeled garlic clove over the tines of a table fork, and look, it's pureed. But she really prefers to use her great Italian mortar and pestle. She never uses a garlic press because she feels it releases bitter juices. She roughly cuts the peeled garlic and pounds it to a paste, adding a little salt. When it's absolutely smooth, she blends in a dollop of red wine vinegar and stirs in about half a cup of her fine extra virgin olive oil.
These are the greens that have all been squeezed, and they're moist but ready to be dressed with vinaigrette. I'm going to pile them up and garnish the plate with some of these slices of prosciutto.
That's very pretty.
And I think we'll garnish this with a few of these mustard blossoms.
Oh, that's pretty though.